Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Shackle 5858. I am Amish Shackle. Foreign news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please let's go to the headlines.
ABC's World News Tonight, America's most watched newscast. Now streaming same day with all the breaking news of the day on Disney Plus. Most trusted. Now on Disney Plus every night.
Tonight there's breaking news just in. What a new report now reveals about the nurse shot and killed in Minneapolis. ABC News obtaining the new DHS report tonight. Preliminary findings just sent to Congress. What it reveals about the nurse shot and killed. Not one, but two federal agents opening fire. And what President Trump just said about the shooting death just moments ago. Here. What they're tonight, the surviving the brazen assassination attempt and firing RPG, the SUV taking a direct hit. The heart-stopping moment, a 19-month-old child falling out of an SUV onto the street in traffic, and tonight in this case, the dramatic video showing a skier triggering an avalanche and how he survives this. America Strong tonight, those beloved bald eagles watched by millions. There's news to the nest. There's also big news after the Bills for their popular head coach. The major headline coming out of Buffalo tonight. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News.
The Prime Minister is standing firm this Tuesday night.
To be absolutely clear, and I said this to the president, I said in Davos.
The U.S.
I'd like to believe that we're going to see some huge change.
And how the backlash to the ICE operation is causing problems for President Trump. Accusations social media is too addictive and harmful. The landmark legal fight to hold tech giants accountable. Plus, majestic microorganisms.
Here we can see some butterfly scales.
A Canadian scientist magnifying the beauty of microscopic creatures.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Canada's Prime Minister is dismissing a claim from the Trump administration that he is privately backpedaling from that speech he gave in Davos about a rupture in the old world order. Mark Carney didn't name the U.S. or President Donald Trump in that speech, but he did say great powers are using economic integration as weapons and tariffs as leverage. Last night on Fox News, the U.S. Treasury Secretary claimed Carney, in a phone call with Trump, aggressively walked back what he'd said in that speech. And today, as Mackenzie Gray reports, Carney had an answer to that.
The latest American assertions shot down by Mark Carney.
To be absolutely clear, and I said this to the president, I meant what I said in Davos.
And his answer began with agreement.
The Prime Minister's Davos speech again catching the ire of the Trump administration, this time on Fox News.
I was in the Oval with the president today. He spoke to Prime Minister Carney, who was very aggressively walking back some of the unfortunate remarks he made at Davos.
I explained to him our arrangement with China. I explained to him what we're doing, 12 new deals on 4 continents in 6 months. He was impressed.
The president had originally been on side with the Canada-China deal.
If you can get a deal with China, you should do that.
But then days later, Trump changed his mind and threatened a 100% tariff, one of multiple warnings from the Trump administration in 2026.
Canada depends on the U.S. There's much more north-south trade than there could ever be.
Just last year, President Trump was elected in a landslide, in part because of a simple promise to all of you, the American people, to secure the border and enforce immigration laws. This is not extreme. This doesn't make us Nazi Germany. Those officers are not Gestapo agents. It is simple law and order for safety and security carried out to protect, in this case, the people of Minnesota. In fact, even President Obama argued passionately, see if it doesn't sound like Donald Trump here, in support of large-scale deportations. Take a look.
There are those in the immigrants' rights community who have argued passionately that we should simply provide those who are illegally with legal status, or at least ignore the laws on the books and put an end to deportation until we have better laws. Ultimately, our nation, like all nations, has the right and obligation to control its borders and set laws for residency and citizenship. And no matter how decent they are, no matter their reasons, the 11 million who broke these laws should be held accountable.
They should be held accountable. It wasn't just talk. Obama deported millions and millions of illegals in this country, and not even criminal illegal aliens. Now, in 2015, he even honored Tom Homan, who is serving as a top ICE official with the government's highest civil service award for deporting so many illegal immigrants. Take a look.
Mr. Homan is the point person for cooperating with state and local authorities and corresponding with them, again, to achieve this level of cooperation to subdue the chaos on the streets of Minneapolis. And I would just point out that Mr. Homan is someone who has been lauded for many, many decades for his experience working in law enforcement. In fact, this is a Washington Post headline from 9 years ago, 2016. Meet the man the White House has honored for deporting illegal immigrants. And I would remind everyone in this room that it was former President Barack Hussein Obama who awarded a medal to Mr. Homan. So he's obviously very qualified. He has the full trust and faith of the president.
Now, just before Homan received his award, the ACLU, they complained that 83% of illegal immigrants were not given, quote, proper due process. Not sure how they got the rights of Americans, but Democrats, the media, they didn't care at all. No protesters, no Nazi, no Gestapo comparisons. In fact, the very same year under
Good evening to you from the newsroom at 2 minutes past 11. The top story tonight, Sir Keir Starmer is on his way to Beijing, becoming the first British Prime Minister to visit China since 2018. He's due to meet Xi Jinping on Thursday as the government tries to reboot ties and relations after years of what Sir Keir Starmer calls a swing from golden age to now ice age. Around 60 UK business and cultural leaders are on the trip too, from HSBC and Jaguar Land Rover to the National Theatre, underlining the focus on trade and investment. Downing Street says the Prime Minister will also raise challenging issues, including human rights, national security, and the case of Jimmy Lai, while insisting engagement with China is now unavoidable. Here, Andy Burnham is pushing back, rejecting claims he knew that Labour would block him before he applied to stand in the Gorton and Denton by-election. The Mayor of Greater Manchester has said it's simply untrue that party figures had warned him the decision was already made, insisting he was never told the outcome was a foregone conclusion. The row follows a weekend vote by the Labour ruling party to block Mr Burnham from standing, a move that has now sparked backlash inside the party. Well, that by-election was triggered by Andrew Gwynn's resignation on health grounds and is expected on the 26th of February. Here's what Andy Burnham had to say about the situation a short time ago.
It is simply untrue to say that I was told that I would be blocked. So I can't say any more than that. I went through the whole weekend having conversations with people at Number 10, people in senior positions of the party, to discuss the pros and cons, and that's all I can say. It's simply untrue to say that there was a message given that I would definitely be blocked. Because after all, the NEC is meant to be an independent body. So how could somebody say it's definitely going to be blocked if they are an independent body? So it doesn't stack up what they're saying. It is simply untrue, as I said.
Also tonight, a growing political row over Labour's tax break for pubs as the Tories accuse the government of a half-hearted U-turn. From April, pubs and live music venues will get 15% off their business rates, but cafes, hotels and restaurants, well, they won't. The Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, says Labour's move isn't fooling anyone and argued thousands of businesses are still being clobbered by higher taxes. And the Home Office is investigating allegations that migrants are buying fake jobs to stay in the UK. An undercover investigation by The Times found visa agents offering forged job records, CVs, payslips and bankroll statements to secure skilled worker visas. Some migrants were allegedly charged up to £13,000 for work that didn't exist. Ministers say the activity is illegal and won't be tolerated, pointing to tougher checks, higher refusal rates and falling visa applications. But opposition parties say the findings expose deep flaws in the system and a black market exploiting the rules designed to control immigration. Well, those are the latest headlines for now. I'll hand you straight back to Patrick and the panel.
Alright, welcome back to Late Edition. We've got a plethora of front pages for you to get stuck into here. Let's start this with the Daily Telegraph. Starmer-led, quote, a witch hunt against Iraq war veterans. Now, some of the details that the Daily Telegraph are reporting are absolutely astonishing here when it comes to Keir Starmer. I think at its core, it appears being willing to work for free as part of a case that would have meant the prosecution of British war heroes, some of whom, of course, were found completely not guilty, had already been tried and found not guilty a couple of times. Lord Hermer was involved in this as well. We are going to hear from an SAS Iraq war veteran in just a couple of minutes' time, but let me crack on with the rest of the front pages. The Mirror, half measures, Labour's pub rescue fallout, cutting rates, but landlords say it's not enough to save them. The iPaper, pubs U-turn to save Britain's locals from extinction, but no help for restaurants facing April tax hikes. The Daily Express, Kel total fast, 350 migrants arrive, but only 281 leave under Starmer's French deal disaster. This is that one-in, one-out deal that's meant that at least 10,380 odd people have arrived since we've decided to sign that deal with the French. The Sun, run for the hills, Katie. Katie Price's husband is a lying swindler, claims two former lovers. Now, this is Katie Price, who appears, maybe, to have fallen for some kind of, I suppose he might deny this, I don't know, but some kind of, love trap, really? I think we'll get more detail on this, but I think he appears to have proposed to another woman just months before in exactly the same way as Katie Price. Pretty bonkers story, this, but The Guardian, mass murder. Medics reveal grim reality of Iran's hidden death toll, and that will ramp up pressure on the government to close a school right here in London, actually, which is the Iranian regime's school here, which is remarkable that we've got a school literally run by the Ayatollah, essentially, here in Britain, which has been accused of all sorts. You'd be surprised to know it hasn't passed its Ofsted inspection. So, yeah. The Independent, alongside the charity Missing People, The Independent has launched a new service to help the 72,000 children that go missing every single year. The Metro, 6 years of chemo when I only needed 6 months. This is a lady who I believe is saying that she was essentially over-treated by the NHS, and of course, obviously, in the process, has subjected herself to, or been subjected to, hugely devastating treatment. So we'll talk about that. The Times, fake jobs for sale to cheat system on migrant visas. Illegal migrants or people who are about to overstay the visa can pay about 20 grand or less to get a fake visa. It just shows the absolute scale of corruption right at the heart of Britain's immigration system. Well, we're going to start by focusing on the Daily Telegraph's front page, which is their headline, that Sir Keir Starmer led, quote, a witch hunt against Iraq war veterans. Now, I'm going to read you
Thanks for staying with us on Watch on France 24. Our main stories for you this hour. Donald Trump moves to turn down the temperature in Minneapolis as the fatal shootings of 2 civilians continue to fuel criticism of his immigration crackdown. Trump said he wanted to de-escalate, but underlined there would be no pullback on his deportation operations. Israel's Prime Minister says the reconstruction of Gaza will not begin until Hamas disarms and all its remaining tunnels are destroyed. As plans for the next phase of the US-backed ceasefire take shape, Benjamin Netanyahu once again underlined that he will not allow the establishment of a Palestinian state. And the landslide in southern Italy leaves the town of Nisemi teetering on a cliff edge. Roads swept away and dozens of homes destroyed, with more than 1,500 people forced to evacuate the Sicilian town. It comes after the ground split over several kilometers after a powerful storm.
This is DW News live from Berlin. Donald Trump says he wants to de-escalate tensions after a fatal shooting of a protester by federal officials in Minneapolis. Trump has already announced leadership changes to his immigration enforcement in Minneapolis. Now his efforts will face the scrutiny of the U.S. Senate, who summoned his immigration chiefs to hearing. A U.S. carrier group arrives in the Middle East amid tensions with Iran over its vicious crackdown on protesters. Look at what a potential U.S. strike against Tehran could look like. And 81 years since the liberation of Auschwitz, the world commemorates the victims of the Holocaust. The Nazi regime murdered over 1 million people at Auschwitz alone, most just because they were Jewish.
Africa News. The news.
Angered by a 10-year freeze on wages, thousands of teachers in Gabon have been on strike for the past 6 weeks, paralyzing the school system. Despite agreed negotiations via a mediator, they've set preconditions for the resumption of classes. Today we're in a situation where we're forced to express our anger, to say that enough is enough, to sound the alarm, not only to improve our own living conditions today, but also those of learners. As someone said, if you want to build a strong nation, you need a strong education system. The collective behind the movement, which includes SOS Education, notably wants the release of 2 union members imprisoned for supporting the strike. It's called for the resumption of classes, but teachers are still staying away.
La grève des enseignants que nous vivons aujourd'hui, nous pouvons.
The teacher strike we're experiencing today has a long history. Since 1990, teachers have been raising issues such as the formalization of administrative situations, which boils down to careers and working conditions, and the constitution of educational establishments. However, the current strike focuses on career progression and the regularization of administrative situations.
Administrative.
The government has launched a fast-track review to clear salary arrears and status backlogs, while with delays in appointments.
Aujourd'hui, la transition est terminée.
Today, the transition is complete. We're back on the warpath regarding the current administrative situation. This is the sticking point in today's demands. It should be remembered that we're us. Across areas. On Monday, process in Norway charged an oil company and 2 of its executives for allegedly paying millions of dollars bribes to him and his family. Norwegian police say an investigation was launched after their counterparts in Monaco sought legal assistance related to a suspicious bank transaction. They say the bulk of the around $25 million was offered to the president and his family in 2016 when the Norway-based oil group applied for an offshore license. The company concerned, Hemla Africa Holding, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Norwegian group Petronor. And Sasso and Gesso's family control the Congolese company MGI International, which owned 25% of the local company Hemla ENP Congo, which was granted the license. Prosecutors say the two Norwegian executives ensured that dividends were regularly.
Nation $850 million humanitarian needs and response plan for Somalia. The plan is 40% less than last year and aims to support 2.4 million people in Somalia.
Our humanitarian colleagues said this year's plan calls for 852 million United States dollars, which is 40% less than last year. It aims to support 2.4 million people, which is less than half of the people in need of humanitarian assistance, leaving significant gaps in essential services. Our humanitarian colleagues stress it is important to note that this reduction in the funding we're appealing for is due to constrained resources, not reduced humanitarian needs. The launch comes at an unprecedented time for Somalia, with funding shortfalls squeezing humanitarian programs just as the country faces severe drought. Our colleagues warn that without urgent and scaled-up assistance, the combined prolonged drought, livelihood collapse, displacement, disease outbreaks, and reduced humanitarian aid will worsen food insecurity, water shortages, and health risks will increase. Last year, the response plan was only funded at 27%, or $397 million out of the $1.4 billion we requested, forcing humanitarian organizations to sharply reduce and, in some cases, suspend.
This is Asia Now.
It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Paul Soon. At this hour, a high-stakes diplomatic mission, the British Prime Minister makes his first official trip to China, seeking trade, stability, and investment in a bid to reset relations with Beijing. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un touts a powerful new rocket system, saying the next steps in Pyongyang's nuclear strategy will be revealed soon. India pitches big on energy as Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlights major investment opportunities in the sector. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has embarked on a high-stakes trip to China, marking the first official visit by a British Premier in 8 years. Mr. Starmer's trip is part of a flurry of diplomacy between Europe and China, with the UK leader hoping to reset ties and boost trade. The visit is happening just a week after the UK government gave the green light for China to build what has been dubbed a super embassy in the heart of London. The approval came despite concerns over the possibility of the embassy being used as a hub for spying. When completed, the embassy will be China's largest in Europe. Mr. Starmer is expected to hold talks with President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang during his 3-day visit. The leader had said ahead of his trip that the UK cannot afford to ignore the economic opportunities Chinese presents. Joining him on the trip are Chancellor Rachel Reeves and Trade Chief Peter Carl, as well as a host of business leaders from more than 50 major business companies and institutions. The Prime Minister had previously pledged to
On ABC iView.
Today, Lee State structures feared lost in Victoria's Otways. An emergency alert remains in place for the out-of-control bushfires. The Nationals' David Little proud to face a leadership spill next week when Parliament returns for the first time since the coalition divorce. US President promises to de-escalate in Minneapolis after ICE agents kill 2 citizens. And higher than expected inflation data increases the chance of a rate rise next week. Melbourne to ABC News. I'm Ross Childs. At least 8 structures have been lost to bushfires in Victoria's southwest as firefighters continue to battle multiple blazes across the state. Crews will be assessing the damage today from the Lara Lee grass fire around the town of Lismore after soaring temperatures and erratic winds made conditions difficult for firefighters yesterday. The Lara Lee fire has now been brought under control and is at advice level. However, an emergency warning is in place for communities further south in the Otways. The emergency level Carlisle River blaze is currently moving northeast towards Gellibrand and Carwarren, with people being urged to take shelter now as it's too late to leave. Cooler weather is bringing some relief after the Carlisle River and Gellibrand blaze breached containment lines yesterday afternoon. The Weather Bureau is warning the danger remains, with total fire bans issued for parts of Victoria, South Australia and New South Wales today. The heatwave that sent temperatures into the high 40s yesterday is impacting parts of New South Wales, the ACT and Queensland today. Canberra has just recorded its hottest temperature in 6 years, reaching 41.3 degrees just before 2 p.m, with the temperature continuing to rise. And we are expecting to get an update from authorities shortly. We'll take you live to Melbourne when that press conference gets underway. Nationals backbencher Colin Boyce will move a spill motion against his party leader David Littleproud when MPs gather on Monday. Political reporter Isabella Tolhurst has more from Canberra.
This morning, Nationals backbencher Colin Boyce announced that he would be moving to take the top job of the national parties and dethrone David Littleproud from his position. He said it was to give his colleagues an option after the Nationals dramatically quit the coalition last week. That all happened as several national senators disagreed with the party position on hate speech laws, and they crossed the floor against them, ending up in a mass resignation of the entire shadow cabinet of Nationals members. David Littleproud then withdrew the Nationals from the coalition for the second time in 12 months, a move that angered a lot of Liberals, but we're now getting a better sense of how some of those Nationals colleagues are feeling about that move as well. Mr. Littleproud did say that he couldn't see the
outbreak, insisting that, like it or not, China matters for the UK. Dire warnings of job losses and closures prompt the Chancellor to wind back her plans to hike business rates for pubs and music venues. Donald Trump addresses the MAGA faithful in Iowa as pressure grows over the killing of civilians by immigration officers in Minneapolis. Labour's rift deepens as Andy Burnham hits out at claims the party warned him his bid to return to Parliament would be blocked. Plus, cars submerged, homes damaged, and schools closed as Storm Chandra blows into the UK and leaves chaos in its wake. Hello, good morning. The Prime Minister has set out a defiant message on the UK's relationship with China ahead of his arrival there this morning. Sir Keir Starmer is seeking to build bridges with Beijing, despite warnings that a closer relationship could harm national security and the UK's relationship with the United States. In a statement, the Prime Minister said, like it or not, China matters for the UK. As one of the world's biggest economic players, a strategic and consistent relationship with them is firmly in our national interest. That does not, he says, mean turning a blind eye to the challenges they pose, but engaging even where we disagree. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has the latest.
The Prime Minister is visiting Beijing and Shanghai, accompanied by nearly 60 British businesses and cultural organisations. He says that as the world's largest economy and the UK's third largest trading partner, engagement with China is vital for the British people. It's the first trip to China by a British Prime Minister for nearly 8 years. The last was by Theresa May in early 2018. The Prime Minister points out that in that time, US presidents, the French President Emmanuel Macron and German chancellors have made regular visits to China. He says that Britain's absence of engagement has been staggering and a dereliction of duty. So, the Prime Minister is hoping to drum up billions of pounds worth of business, yet at the same time, he says, we will not trade economic cooperation for our national security. He says that, like it or not, China matters to the UK. He says it's one of the world's biggest economic players, and it's in the national interest to engage.
Thank you for watching Amish Shakil 5858. I am Amish Shakil. I hope you will visit again. Have a good life. Bye-bye.